Oh, Chick-fil-A, you were always there for me, except on Sundays. You helped me through so much. Oh, In-N-Out, your cheeseburgers, they just always tasted so amazing. I'm gonna miss them so much. And Taco Bell. Taco Bell for all my late night needs. Oh, Taco Bell. Oh, chocolate. How will I ever get through PMS without you? Oh, you're just so...
Hey.
Yes?
What are you doing?
Just having some food funerals.
Uh-huh. You're odd. I love you. Bye.
Bye. Hi guys, it's Nicole. So I thought it would be fun today to talk about food funerals. So I had my gastric bypass surgery about 15 months ago, down about 100 pounds. But in researching before I had the surgery, I saw lots of videos, lots of articles about food funerals, and most people advised against them. Now, I have dieted like most people who go through bariatric surgery. I have dieted hundreds of times in my past, and I was having lots of food funerals, not calling them that, didn't realize they had a more formal name, but I had a lot of food funerals every time I was about to embark on a new diet. And then even though I was warned, I still had some food funerals before my gastric bypass surgery. Okay, so you may have heard the term food funeral before. Or maybe you haven't, but you probably know what a food funeral is. You probably have had a few yourself. So a food funeral is when you tell yourself you are going to have a food for the very last time. So maybe it's because you're starting a new diet and you have resolved to never eat carbs again. Or maybe you're having bariatric surgery and you don't think that your pouch will ever allow you to eat that food again. Or maybe you're having bariatric surgery and you just say, this is, where I'm turning my life around. I will never eat that food ever again. I don't like to deal in absolutes. We'll just say that right off the top. But a food funeral is where you are saying goodbye to a food that you love because for some reason you think you'll never eat it again. Now, funerals for people, they serve a purpose, right? They bring us comfort. They give us a chance to celebrate and say goodbye to somebody who made a big, played a big part in our lives. At a funeral for a person, we share our best memories of them. In general, at funerals, only good is spoken about the recently departed. I mean, at least the funerals I've been to, everything's said very positively about the person who's no longer with us. I don't know, maybe you've been to some really entertaining funerals where some tea was spilled. But I mean, like at my great aunt's funeral, there was a speaker who talked about some of the shenanigans she got into in high school, and one story involved her stealing a car. But it was said, with lighthearted brevity, and it was just, a story to share how adventurous my dear old aunt was in her youth. So it was funny and brought, chuckles from the crowd, but nothing negative was really brought up. And I mean, that's great. This is the last time, that person, we're really going to be honoring them. So it makes sense that we would just bring up good memories about them. However, we tend to treat food funerals very similarly. We have that last meal, that meal for the very last time. And we think about all the good emotions that we associate with that food. We're not thinking about the bad things. We're thinking about the hole that they're going to leave in our lives when we're not able to eat them anymore. We celebrate those foods. We often go overboard. But unlike, my deceased great aunt, that food is not going away for forever. I'm going to see that food again. The foods that you're resolving to never eat again, you're going to come across again. But we've built them up so high in these food funerals and, brought in so many good emotions that during our last experience with them. Well, can you see how that's creating a problem for the next time we run into them? Because now in our estimations, we've held them so high up. That In-N-Out cheeseburger that you're having that one last time is so delicious and so savory, and that bun just perfectly crispy on the edges. But what you neglect to realize during a food funeral is how many calories are in that cheeseburger, how many grams of saturated fat, how many of those cheeseburgers have contributed to your obesity, How many of those cheeseburgers have contributed to your elevated blood pressure, your increased cholesterol? And when I had my food funerals, I neglected to say, you know, this In-N-Out cheeseburger, although mighty delicious, is part of the reason why my joints hurt so bad. It has contributed to my extra pounds that are now crushing my little frame. And then, you know, after eating a delicious fat-laden meal, for a moment, I'm happy. I have those endorphins in my brain, but then they wear off and my mood starts to crash. And usually I associate, you know, during a food funeral or after a food funeral, I don't stop and think that I'm feeling like absolute crap. Not because I'm now sad that I'm never going to be eating my favorite cheeseburger again, but because, well, the happy chemicals from that cheeseburger have worn off and now I feel worse than I did before I ate it. You don't think of those things during food funerals. At a food funeral for my favorite brownies, let's be honest, I ate like half a pan of brownies at a time during my brownie food funeral. And I thought about how gooey and delicious those brownies were and how that Betty Crocker knows what she's doing. And I just thought about how happy I was to eat those brownies. And sad that it was the last time I was ever going to eat a brownie in my life. You know, I wasn't thinking that I'm going to have a huge sugar crash in a couple of hours and feel like crap. I wasn't thinking, again, that this is another reason why my joints hurt every single day of my life, because I'm eating so many calories. I didn't think about that stuff. I only thought about the good. For a lot of us, food is a comfort. So when things get hard, food has always been there for us in our lives to provide some comfort. It's been there when we needed that something to help us out. Whether we're celebrating things, whether we're in pain, food has just always been there for us. And so there's this big fear that comes from whether you're starting a diet or you're going to have this surgery coming up. You're afraid of, what am I going to do when I need a little pick-me-up? Or what am I going to do when, you know, I go to celebrate with my friends? We always go to this bar and have drinks and those amazing sandwiches at the bar. What am I going to do instead? I better, you know, have one last shebang. The thought of not being able to eat certain foods really scares us. And so we have food funerals to cope. And even though my doctors and my psychologist all told me that I would one day be able to eat my favorite foods again, it might not be for a few months, but one day I'd be able to eat everything I wanted to eat again, I didn't believe them. I don't know, why would I believe people with all this experience over my scared little mind that only has experience in fear and anxiety? But I still had food funerals. I also tried to tell myself I would be strong and never eat those bad foods ever again, because the surgery marked a turning point. This was a new life for me. And you know, that's true. My life is completely different 15 months after having the surgery. And it is a new life. But I should know myself a little better and know that there's no way in heck I was never going to have an In-N-Out cheeseburger ever again. And now I have one. I've probably had 3 or 4 in the past 15 months. I think my first one was like 4 months after surgery. I had it protein style, so without the bun. But I just had one a couple weeks ago and I had the bun too. It took me a while to eat it. I didn't eat it all in one sitting, but I was able to eat it and it was delicious. But I'm also very aware that cheeseburger is not all good. Like, there are definitely some negatives to it. I had some GERD act up again because I got onions on it, and I still get acid reflux with onions. So before I had surgery, well, I told myself for a while I wasn't going to do food funerals, and then I started making a list on an Excel spreadsheet because, well, that's how I organize my whole life. But I started making a list of places I needed to eat at one last time before I started the pre-op diet. And then I realized I'm making a list of food funerals, and I had a lot. Here, I'll share my list with you. So if they're marked in green, those are restaurants that I actually, or foods that I actually was able to have a food funeral for before my surgery. There are a lot on there. But then there are some that aren't green, and I will tell you, before my pre-op diet started, I looked at that list and I was like, oh man, I didn't get to eat there one last time. But I have since eaten at a lot of those restaurants again. It wasn't one last time. Like, I could eat any of those places now. My pouch allows me to. It's just, some of them I have never eaten at since my surgery, and I don't really care to. I'm fine, but I know I could. The sushi on the list. So I actually had sushi for New Year's Eve dinner. That was the first time I'd had sushi since before my surgery, and it was great. I could only eat like two. How many pieces did I had? Just 2 or 3 pieces, because rice fills me up so quickly. But it was delicious, and I know I can eat it again in the future. Like, I didn't need to have a food funeral for it. I wasn't saying goodbye to it for forever. I still haven't had a Butterfinger, so that's funny because before surgery, I loved Butterfingers. Loved Butterfingers. And I mean, it sounds decent, but I don't need it. So I didn't have a food funeral for Butterfingers, and I was feeling a little sad about that. I remember thinking maybe I should go to the gas station and get a Butterfinger that last night before surgery, but I didn't. And I don't know, I just haven't had one. And it's been fine. I did fine without a food funeral. I did have some food funerals, as you can see from the things that are green on the list. Were they worth it? Well, let's see. I gained 4 pounds before surgery, before I started my pre-op diet. And the way my program worked was we went to a nutrition class every month, and we had to step on a scale, and they weighed us before class. Some people had a weight loss goal that they had to achieve before they could be scheduled for surgery. I did not have a weight loss goal, and I was actually kind of like right on the border of qualifying for surgery based on my weight. So they told me not to lose any weight either, but they told me not to gain. I had to stay stable. And the first month I stayed the same. Second month I gained a pound. The third month, which was the final month of weighing, I had gained a total of 4 pounds, and they told me that the cutoff was 5 pounds. If I had gained 5 pounds, that would have delayed me having surgery. So, and I mean, most of these were from these food funerals. Like, most of the weight gain was probably from the food funerals, from overindulging in these high calorie, high fat meals that I was sure, I needed to eat one last time before starting my pre-op diet. And I was so mad at myself. I mean, if I had gained 1 more pound, I would have had to delay my surgery. And then what would have happened? Well, I probably would have had more food funerals. Probably would have checked off everything on those lists, and I probably would have delayed the surgery even more. So, and then there are factors beyond your control that can delay your surgery as well. So, let's say you have your food funerals, but you're still fine to proceed with surgery, speaking from a weight-wise, but then something else happens. Maybe the doctor has an emergency and has to postpone your surgery. Well, now you have this extra time. You're probably going to fill it with more food funerals and just get yourself into a bad way. Having those food funerals, I don't know that they were the smartest option for me. I almost screwed things up, and I was so mad at myself. And it really wasn't worth it eating those foods one last time, because I've eaten those foods since. There were 2 food funerals, I guess you could look at them as being food funerals, that I was glad to have had. So I love Olive Garden, or I loved Olive Garden. I haven't eaten Olive Garden since I had my surgery, but I used to eat Olive Garden a couple of times a month, and I loved it so much. So I made time to go to Olive Garden one last time before starting the pre-op diet, and actually my parents took me, and it was just my parents and I. We never go out to dinner. It was really nice. It was a great time. I mean, I would say I don't even remember what I ate, but I do remember because I always get the same thing at Olive Garden. I always get the eggplant parmigiana with the chicken gnocchi soup, and I'm sure they were delicious. But I was really happy to have that time with my parents. So that food funeral wasn't even really about the food. It was just being able to enjoy time one-on-one with my parents. Or I guess that's 2-on-1 with my parents. Another food funeral, I guess you could see it as, was I have friends that I go to bar trivia with, and it's really the only time I drink beer. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to drink beer post-operatively because of the carbonation. And again, I just am not a big drinker anyway. So, but I wanted to go and have this goat cheese sandwich they have at that bar and a beer one last time, and so I did. But I'm glad I went. We had a lot of fun, my friends and I, playing bar trivia. And yeah, so I'm glad I did that one as well. Again, though, it wasn't so much about the food. I probably could have still gone and not partaken in the beer, but I don't know. I've been to bar trivia with my friends since. I haven't drank beer, haven't drank any alcohol at bar trivia since, and I still had a lot of fun. And I was able to eat the goat cheese sandwich, I think, last time I went. Did I? Now I can't even remember. I don't know, but I could. So do I think you should have a food funeral? Or several food funerals? I don't think they're a good idea. I think they build up foods in our mind and really get us in a mindset where we're only seeing the positives in these foods that have been detrimental in our lives. Because let's be honest, people are not having food funerals for salads. I think they really put the unhealthy foods up on a pedestal. But I also am a realist, and I know that people are going to do what people want to do. And that it's human nature to indulge before you start on this restriction. Like, you know the pre-op diet's coming, so I think it's only human that you are going to want to indulge before that pre-op diet starts. Or before you start any kind of diet. It's just human nature to want to indulge one last time. Or what we think is one last time, but honestly, it's never going to be one last time. So my advice to you is to not go crazy. Because chances are you will eat those foods again. Whether you think you're not going to physically be able to eat those foods again, you're probably at some point going to be able to eat them. Or, if you think in your mind that I'm just going to be strong and never eat them again, chances are, even though you might be a really strong person, there's going to come a time when you're going to eat that food again. And maybe with some alterations, like maybe you're not going to be able to eat as much of that food again, or maybe you're not going to be able to eat as much sugar again in the future. If you have a food funeral, just practice moderation and be honest with yourself. So much of our journey is mental. And that pre-surgery period is really a good time to start focusing on better habits. Be honest with yourself on how a food is really making you feel. Yeah, maybe that cheeseburger feels amazing right now, but think, every time I have a cheeseburger, a couple hours later, I have this crash where the good chemicals have left my brain and now I'm feeling sad again, or I'm feeling, some regret. And just tell yourself as you're eating that cheeseburger, I'm going to have that crash in the future, and really start to associate both the good and the bad with that food. Be honest. This food, this cheeseburger is really high in saturated fat. I'm really harming my heart as I'm eating this. I'm really, increasing my blood pressure or leading to a bump in my cholesterol. And just, make sure that you're thinking not just about the positives, but also the negatives associated with that food. So my advice to you, if you're going to have a food funeral, if you're going to indulge for one last time, just be smart about it. Just, tell yourself up front that this is what I'm doing. I'm indulging, in this food because of this reason. I think I'm never going to be able to eat it again, or I think I'm going to be strong enough to never eat it again when I encounter it in the future. Just be honest while you're eating it. Think about the good and the bad things that are happening when you eat that food. And just try to do it in moderation. So there are just a couple of food funerals that I'm glad I had, but honestly, I don't even know if they were food funerals. They were more shared food experiences, because what I really appreciated about them were, spending time with the people I was with and having those shared experiences. The foods, honestly, there is not a single food funeral that I had by myself, and I had several of them where it was just me and the pan of brownies or me and the In-N-Out cheeseburgers. None of those were particularly memorable, and honestly, I have had a brownie since. I have had In-N-Out cheeseburgers. I've had almost everything since having the gastric bypass surgery. I've just had it in much smaller amounts, and I've been smarter about it and made some alterations to make things a little healthier. And yeah, there are no foods that I feel my life is incomplete without. So yeah, just try to be smart about it is my final advice to you. Okay, if you guys have any questions, please ask them below. I would love to help anybody with, any questions or concerns that they may have, or if you just have comments for other people. This community is so very supportive of one another, so please interact below in the comments. That's a great area for it. And then, if you found this video to be helpful, maybe some of my other videos would be helpful as well. So please watch those, like, subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.